joining us today on the Oakland County Megacast to talk about the work being done to improve our roads and make them safer is Craig Bryson. He is the Senior Communications Manager for the Road Commission of Oakland County. Craig, always great to talk to you.
Good morning, Ronnie. Nice to talk to you.
So we kind of had a taste of winter at the start of the week. How did that go?
It went pretty well. In the big scheme of things, it was a pretty small thing, but of course we were still out around the clock for, I think we were out about 36 hours on that one. So it was, it took a little work, but it wasn't bad. Weather cooperated. The traffic, for better or for worse right now, the traffic is a little bit less than it pre-COVID days. So that does help as well.
Knowing that too as well, Craig, does that play into your plan? The lower traffic volumes because of COVID, does that play into your day-to-day plans when you're rolling out the salt and the plow trucks?
No, because we still have to assume there's going to be traffic out there, so our plans don't change. It makes it easier to accomplish our goals, but it doesn't change our plans really.
With that, how many team members and how is the pandemic? Because this is really the first big winter season that we're going into since COVID-19 and this pandemic. What is the plan for you and your team, and how has it changed because of the pandemic, or has it at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've got about the same number of staff we usually have. We've got about 180 people who are available to drive snowplow trucks when needed. What's really different is that, typically a driver will work, in a storm, they can work for 16 hours. They go into the garage, jump out of their trucks and go take a break, and somebody else will jump into the trucks. Now, between that transition period, we've got to completely scrub down the trucks, make sure they're completely clean. The drivers are, of course, wearing masks while they're in the garages or they're any place where they're with other people. So that's the biggest change, is just trying to keep our drivers safe and away from anybody who may be infected.
And with that, because of your drivers and your staffing, if one person goes out and then you have to quarantine so many people, what could the impact be on your team? Because I'm sure you guys are talking about that.
Absolutely. We've been putting in place some plans, contingency plans. It could be horrific if somebody gets, God forbid, somebody gets infected and they infect other people at our garage, or somehow it spreads through one of our garages. So the first step would be if one of our garages becomes impacted and any significant number of drivers has to be quarantined, then we have 6 garages around the county. The other garages will help out that garage. If it's larger than that and it spreads to more than one of our garages and it impacts more of the county-wide, we're talking to surrounding counties about sort of mutual aid agreements. And we've got great relationships with all of the county road agencies surrounding us, and they're all, sort of in the same boat. So we're working with them to make sure we've got all those agreements in place. That gets a little bit tricky from a legal point of view because we have to make sure everybody's reimbursed for the expenditures and all of that. But it is entirely possible that we could send our trucks into Genesee County or Macomb County, or vice versa. If something happened here, they could send their trucks in to help us out here. So it's a serious issue.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's not so much like it's that quarantine period where if someone was exposed, well, you have to be quarantined. And I know the CDC is now reducing that number from 7 to 10 days instead of a full 14 days. But for a small staff or for a vital staff in the middle of a snowstorm, that is, it's got to be something that keeps you and the leadership team over there at the Road Commission up at night.
Oh, it does. Even if it's only a week that people are quarantined, we have had cases where we've had snowstorms back to back to back, for multiple weeks at a time that keep us running around the clock. And, it's not only the number of people that are out on the road at any given moment. We have to schedule on a 24-hour rolling basis when we're in that kind of snow fighting operation. So we may have 106 people out on the road at one time, but we have to be able to have those 106 people available for 24 hours a day for multiple days in a row. So that's where it really gets to be potentially problematic and challenging.
So, Craig, go ahead. You can admit to us. Are you doing like a little dance every day to say no snow winter, no snow winter?
Absolutely, we would love that. You know, for multiple reasons, not the least of which is COVID. But of course, the less winter maintenance activities we do, the more money we save. You know, we in a normal winter, excluding all of the COVID factors, we spend about $12 million on winter road maintenance, and that's work that we have nothing to show for at the end of the winter. There's no road improvements, there's no new equipment, there's just $12 million gone out the door just to keep the roads clear during the winter. So anytime we can reduce that, that's a cost savings to us, and that is money we can use in other places in our budget.
Well, I've been trying to talk to Mother Nature. I'm like, okay, can we just have snow on December 24th, 25th, maybe through New Year's, and then you can do away with it.
We'd be good with that. If you can get a word in for us too, we'd appreciate that.
So you mentioned the budget. How is your budget? Because the budget is kind of set previously, so it's not so much this year's budget, but I would imagine you're kind of looking at those numbers going forward.
Absolutely, and we were concerned coming into this year. It looks like everything is going to be okay, but the challenge is that our second largest source of funding is the state gas tax. And, early on in the COVID period, starting in March, a whole lot of people were working from home, which means they're not driving, which means they're not buying gas and generating gas tax revenue. So those revenues took a big dive in the early part of the year. They're getting back to normal now. They're not at normal, but they're certainly better than they were. So those revenues have increased. We're a little bit less concerned. At the same time, this is the final year, 2021, of the state's 2015 road funding package. So that last increment of funding kicked in this year, which gave us a little boost of funding as well. And that's kind of making up for the lost revenue from the gas tax due to COVID. So budget-wise, we're okay. We'll see over the next couple of years how that really plays out. And if the vaccine's coming and we can get everybody vaccinated early 2021 and kind of get back to normal, that would be, of course, the best case scenario, of course, health-wise, but also for financially for us. So, that's where we are at the moment.
With that, though, with less people traveling and driving each and every day, is that less wear and tear on the roads as well, though? Especially this, to me, seems to be the big pothole season, right? This time where we freeze, we thaw, we freeze, we thaw. So with fewer people on the roads, will that help with the wear and tear on our roads, and then therefore the work that you and your team have to do?
Theoretically, it should. We really haven't seen a dramatic reduction in that yet. And part of the problem is the places where we have potholes are typically the roads that are already in poor condition, and any amount of traffic is going to, tear up those sections of roads. So the incremental decrease in traffic is not really dramatically reducing that. It certainly helps when our crews are out patching the potholes to have less traffic come speeding around them. We appreciate that, but we have not seen a reduction in the number of potholes, unfortunately.
Oh, you just know how to put a big old thing of coal in our stockings before Christmas.
We're good at bringing reality to town.
So I noticed that we had some road closure signs recently, Maple and West Bloomfield, Bloomfield Hills. What is that construction? How many days are we going to be living with this?
Right. So right now, Maple is closed between Inkster and Franklin, right in Bloomfield Township, right on the West Bloomfield border. That is closed so that DTE Energy can relocate their electrical lines within that section in anticipation of us completely resurfacing the road next year in spring, summer of 21. So it's closed right now through December 18th is what DTE is telling us. That also during that time, we're going to be removing some trees there in anticipation of the project. It'll then close again in the spring in hopefully April if weather permits, and be closed through about September or October, again, if weather permits, so that we can totally resurface that road. We're going to tear out a culvert that's in there and replace it. It's a pretty big project. It's about a $4.1 million project, but during that time next year, it will be closed to through traffic as well.
Craig Bryson with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. He is with the Oakland County Road Commission. With that, going into the winter months, what can we anticipate as drivers here in the state of Michigan? Are we going to notice anything different?
Not really. I mean, I think from a winter maintenance point of view, it's shaping up to be every year is different as far as the amount of snow and the amount of precipitation and temperatures we get, but generally speaking, it should be a relatively normal year. I'm sure we'll have some bad storms, but we're not anticipating anything really out of the normal this year.
With that, Craig, talk a little bit about how you and your team, you schedule some of these road closures, and what months can you do things, and at what point in time do you pretty much shut off road construction because of the winter months and then just focus on if your team needs to address any winter storms?
Yeah, that's a great question. Generally, the construction season is April to November. Occasionally, we'll have a project that'll push into December. This Maple closure is a little different. It's not really road construction. It's just DTE Energy doing some excavation. And that type of thing they can do year-round. We try to get that also condensed during the regular construction season, but sometimes they can do it. We need to have it done before the construction season starts so that they can do the project in this case. But right now, pretty much all of our actual road construction projects have wrapped up for the season. And that's beneficial for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gets them out of the way so we can do winter maintenance, but also it's sort of dictated by the temperature. You can't put down concrete when it's below freezing. You can't, asphalt doesn't work well when it's below freezing. So those are dictated by temperature and materials, but also helps out with the winter maintenance.
See, there are so many of those factors that the general public just doesn't get behind the scenes of what you and your team do every day.
Oh, you wouldn't believe all the little details that we have to consider. I mean, there are environmental things. We cannot do certain projects during certain months in the spring because it's bat breeding season, and there are endangered bat species that live in the trees along our roads, and we're not allowed to touch those trees. So if we have to remove some trees, that we have to do it during non-bat breeding season. There are fish in, and things like mussels in some of our rivers and waterways. So if we're doing a bridge or a culvert project, we can't touch the water during certain months during fish breeding season or mussel breeding season. So there's all these factors that most people have no idea, but they have a real impact on our schedules, and they are often a challenge.
I'm thinking about those. I'm like, are you kidding me? It really is. No one ever thinks about those things, right?
Well, believe it or not, there was one project on, I believe it was Cass Lake Road in Keego Harbor a number of years ago where there was an endangered species of mussels in the water underneath the bridge. We had to literally go in, pick up those mussels, move them to a new home, relocate them before we could even touch the bridge. I mean, it's, they don't teach that in construction engineering classes.
Absolutely not. I will say I remember that project, and it was the biggest hassle because the bridge was closed.
It was. And that's a big challenge in Oakland County because we have so many lakes that, the roads go around the lake. So if one road is closed, it's not like some places in the metro area where there's a grid pattern, there's another road half mile away. You have to go all the way around the lake to make it to your destination. Yeah, that's a problem.
Craig Bryson joining us on the Oakland County MegaCast, the Senior Communications Manager at the Road Commission for Oakland County. And Craig, we've talked about it already a little bit, that with COVID-19, the traffic numbers on a daily basis are down. They're expected to be down similarly in the winter months of 2020 due to COVID-19 as this crisis continues on. Even with that being the case, what should drivers be aware of as they're out on the roads during the snowy season, the stormy season, as road crews are out maintaining the roads and keeping them in safe conditions? What should people be doing to keep the roads safe for those workers, but also for each other, even with reduced traffic?
That is a great question. I thank you for asking it. We say this all the time, that we will do everything we can to try to make the roads as free of ice and snow as we can, but there will be times when there will be snow and ice on the roads. And it is always incumbent upon drivers to drive appropriately for the conditions. we hear people saying, I couldn't drive 70 miles an hour on the freeway this morning. You guys aren't doing your job. Well, we're doing everything we can. But if there's snow coming down an inch an hour, as there sometimes is in the winter here, the roads are going to be snow covered, and you got to slow down. Don't tailgate, slow down, give all of the other vehicles room, and particularly, please don't crowd the plow. Don't tailgate a big snow plow. Don't try to pass them and cut them off. Those are big trucks that take a lot of space to slow down and to turn. And when vehicles hit them, unfortunately, it often does little damage to our trucks, but it can total out a car real quick hitting one of those big steel trucks.
Such important information. Craig Bryson with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. Craig, anything we didn't ask that you want to touch on before we let you go?
Well, a couple of things that I think sometimes people don't really fully understand, and we try to share is, one of the big challenges for us is when do we call in our trucks? When there's forecasted snow coming, everybody's saying, well, that's simple. The forecast said a storm is coming. But when is that storm coming? When we have what we call full run coverage, which is 106 snowplows out, it costs us between $24,000 and $27,000-$28,000 an hour to run those crews. And if the forecast is the snow is going to start in 3 hours, we don't want to bring those drivers in 3 hours early and waste $75,000 of taxpayer dollars just sitting around waiting for the snow to start. So we want to try to make those decisions as accurately as we can. And it's always a little bit of a challenge, but we watch the forecast. We have our own road-related forecasting services. We have our own Doppler radar service. We listen to our friends at the television and radio media forecasting and try to use all that information to try to make the best call we can and bring those trucks in. But it's sometimes, there are storms that come up out of nowhere that nobody forecasted. We talked to the meteorologists at the local television stations, and while they sometimes don't like to admit it, there are storms that they didn't know were coming, and it catches all of us by surprise, and that's never fun, but sometimes that happens as well. So we just like the people to know that we're watching these things and making the best educated decisions and guesses that we can with the information we have, and a lot of times we'll get it right, occasionally we won't, but we do the best we can with the information available.
That is good information to leave on, because I will say, Craig, I don't know if you know this, but I actually used to do weather in Lansing. And I'm really happy that there are no tapes left of those days, because I was terrible. But weather is not an exact science, and it's an educated guess. And when you're weighing that also against your entire team and the tax dollars involved, you're trying to make that best decision. So thank you, though, for you and your team and everything you all do each and every day to keep us safe here in Oakland County.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.